The sky over Zarek Prime was a pale, unnatural hue, choked with ash and the remnants of war. Captain Arden Cole adjusted his helmet as he and his team trudged through the ruins of the capital city. The ground beneath their boots crunched with every step, littered with fragments of glass, twisted metal, and what remained of a civilization that once rivaled humanity's own. "Keep an eye on your scanners," Cole ordered, his voice firm but quiet. "Command wants every last Zarek accounted for." He hated the order, but it wasn't his place to question it, at least not openly. The Zarek Dominion had pushed humanity to the brink during the war, and while their defeat was celebrated, the aftermath was a far more complicated affair. Cole had seen enough death to know that the lines between victory and loss blurred quickly when survival became the only goal. The comm crackled in his ear as Private Lawrence spoke up. "Captain, I've got a faint heat signature up ahead. Could be stragglers." Cole motioned for the team to spread out. They moved cautiously, their weapons at the ready. The ruins were eerily silent, save for the occasional groan of shifting metal. As they neared the source of the signature, Cole caught sight of a half-collapsed structure, a once grand hall reduced to a jagged skeleton of stone and steel. "Inside," Cole said, his voice low. "Stay sharp." The interior of the hall was dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of their suits' headlamps. Cole's heart raced as they stepped deeper into the space. Something about the air felt different, tense, almost electric. Then, a faint sound reached his ears, a soft, muffled sob. "Do you hear that?" he asked, glancing back at his team. Lorne nodded. "Sounds like," he trailed off, his expression puzzled. Cole followed the sound, his steps careful and deliberate. He pushed aside a piece of rubble, revealing a narrow opening leading to an underground chamber. The sobbing grew louder, more distinct. Cole gestured for Lorne to cover him as he crouched and crawled through the gap. What he found on the other side stopped him cold. The chamber was small, dimly lit by the faint bioluminescent patterns that lined the walls, a hallmark of Zarek architecture. In the center of the room were half a dozen Zarek children, huddled together in fear. Their skin shimmered faintly, and their wide, luminous eyes glistened with tears. For a moment, Cole couldn't move. The sight of them, so small, so fragile, clashed violently with the image of the Zarek soldiers he'd fought on the battlefield. These weren't warriors. They were just kids. "Captain," Lorne's voice came through the comm, "what's down there?" Cole hesitated, his gaze fixed on the children. One of them, a girl with vibrant, shifting colors across her skin, looked up at him. Her gaze was a mixture of terror and curiosity. "Stand by," Cole said, his voice strained. Before he could act, a low growl echoed through the chamber. Cole spun around, his weapon raised, as a shadow emerged from the far corner. It was a Zarek male, his towering frame battered and scarred. He moved with a limp, but his piercing gaze was steady, and his claws glinted in the dim light. "Stay back," the Zarek growled, his voice deep and guttural. He positioned himself between Cole and the children, his stance protective despite his obvious injuries. Cole didn't lower his weapon. "I'm not here to hurt them," he said evenly. "But you're giving me very little reason to believe you." The Zarek bared his teeth. "Humans don't spare Zarek. We are enemies, are we not?" Cole's grip on his weapon tightened. "I'm a soldier. My job is to follow orders. But this," he gestured toward the children. "This isn't war. It's survival. You're not fighters. You're just trying to stay alive." The Zarek's eyes narrowed. "And what does a human soldier care about the survival of his enemy?" Cole hesitated. He didn't have an answer, at least, not one that made sense. All he knew was that he couldn't bring himself to see these children as threats. Lorne's voice crackled through the comm again. "Captain, we've got movement outside. Looks like a drone patrol. You need backup?" "No," Cole replied quickly. "Hold your position." The Zarek's expression shifted slightly. Was that surprise? Relief? Cole couldn't tell. He took a cautious step forward, lowering his weapon slightly. "Look, I can't change what's happened," Cole said. but I don't want to see any more blood spilled today. Let me help. The Zarek didn't move. Why would you help us? Because I'm tired, Cole admitted. Tired of watching people die for no reason. If there's a chance to save lives, I'll take it. The tension in the chamber hung thick, but slowly, the Zarek lowered his claws. My name is Veeler, he said, his voice still weary. These children are all that's left of our colony. If you betray us... I won't, Cole interrupted. But I can't do this alone. If you want these kids to survive, we have to work together. Veeler studied him for a long moment before nodding. Cole crawled back through the gap and rejoined his team. Lorne's expression was one of confusion and concern. Captain, what's going on down there? Cole straightened, his tone firm. There are non-combatants in that chamber. Children. I'm not reporting this in. Lorne's eyes widened. Sir, if command finds out. They won't, Cole said. Not if we move fast. We're getting them out of here. Lorne hesitated but eventually nodded. Understood, sir. As the team worked to secure the chamber, Cole felt the weight of his decision settling on his shoulders. He was defying direct orders, risking his career, and possibly his life, to protect the very people humanity had spent decades fighting. But as he looked into the wide, tear-filled eyes of the Zarek children, he knew he couldn't have made any other choice. Above them, the ruins of the city loomed, a stark reminder of what war had taken from both sides. But in that small chamber, among the rubble and the fear, a fragile spark of hope had been lit. For Cole, it was enough. The chapter ends with the team preparing to move the children to safety, Veeler's weary trust beginning to grow, and Cole facing the uncertainty of what comes next. The ruins of Zarek Prime were eerily quiet as Captain Arden Cole led his team back through the shattered cityscape. The small group of Zarek children followed closely, their luminous eyes darting nervously at every sound. Veeler walked at the rear, his towering frame tense, his gaze constantly scanning the horizon for threats. You're sure about this, sir? Private Lorne asked, keeping his voice low. His eyes flicked to the children, then back to Cole. Command's not going to look the other way if they find out. I'm sure, Cole replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. These kids aren't a threat, and neither is Veeler. They're just trying to survive. That's worth risking a reprimand, or worse. Lorne sighed but nodded, falling silent. The rest of the team moved without question, their loyalty to Cole evident in their quiet efficiency. Still, the tension was palpable. Every step deeper into the ruins felt like balancing on the edge of a knife. Veeler's voice broke the silence. Your people won't forgive this, you know. Cole glanced back at the Zarek commander. Maybe not. But that doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to do. Veeler snorted softly, his tone laced with skepticism. Humans aren't known for their mercy. Why risk everything for enemies you've spent decades trying to destroy? Cole slowed his pace, turning slightly to face him. Because I've seen enough death to last a lifetime. And because I know what happens if we keep going down this path, it ends in extinction, for both of us. Veeler didn't respond immediately. Instead, he studied Cole with a mixture of suspicion and reluctant respect. Finally, he said, you speak as though you've seen the worst of war. Perhaps you have. But words are easy. Actions are what matter. Then watch my actions, Cole replied simply, before picking up his pace again. The group moved cautiously through the maze of rubble, using what remained of the city's structures for cover. The children were eerily quiet, their wide eyes taking in the devastation around them. Occasionally, one of them would stumble, and Veeler would steady them with a gentleness that seemed at odds with his imposing frame. As they reached a narrow alleyway, Cole raised a hand, signaling the group to stop. He crouched low, peering around the corner. A patrol of human drones hovered nearby, their sleek forms bristling with weaponry. Damn it, Cole muttered under his breath. He tapped his comm. Lorne, any way we can bypass them? Lorne consulted his scanner, his brow furrowed. They're covering the main path out of here. We'd have to double back and take the longer route. Cole shook his head. We don't have time for that. The drones are programmed to target Xeric biosignatures. If they see the kids, he didn't finish the thought. Veeler stepped forward, his expression grim. I could draw them away. That's not happening, Cole said immediately. You wouldn't make it 5 steps before they cut you down. Veeler's jaw tightened. And if we stay here, we all die. Your loyalty is admirable, Captain, but misplaced. My life isn't worth the lives of these children. Cole met his gaze, his voice low but firm. No one's dying today. Not you, not them. We'll find another way. Veeler stared at him for a moment, then nodded reluctantly. Very well. But if it comes to a choice, I will not hesitate to act. The group doubled back, moving through a series of underground tunnels that once served as the city's infrastructure. The air was damp and heavy, the faint sound of dripping water echoing through the narrow passages. The children clung to each other, their fear palpable. As they moved, Cole glanced at Veeler. How did you manage to keep them alive for this long? Veeler's expression softened slightly. It wasn't easy. We scavenged what we could, avoided patrols, and stayed hidden. But it's a losing battle. Resources are gone, and the children, they're fragile. Xeric biology was never meant to endure this kind of strain. Cole frowned. What do you mean? Veeler hesitated, then sighed. Our people relied heavily on bioengineering. It gave us strength, adaptability, but at a cost. These children represent the last generation of natural-born Xeric. Without them, our species will cease to exist. The weight of Veeler's words hit Cole like a punch to the gut. These weren't just survivors, they were the future of an entire species. Then we have to get them to safety, Cole said, his resolve hardening. No matter what it takes. As they neared the end of the tunnel, Lorne stopped abruptly, holding up his scanner. We've got movement ahead. Looks like a rogue Xeric scavenger group. Veeler's expression darkened. They won't hesitate to attack, even their own kind. Desperation makes people do terrible things. Cole nodded. We'll avoid them if we can. But if it comes to a fight, we'll hold the line. Veeler glanced at the children, then back at Cole. If it comes to a fight, I'll hold the line. These are my people, Captain. Your soldiers would be seen as invaders, no matter your intentions. Cole opened his mouth to argue but stopped himself. Veeler was right, his presence would only escalate the situation. Fine. But if you need backup, you call for it. Veeler inclined his head. Agreed. The group moved carefully, skirting the scavengers' territory. For a while, it seemed they might make it through undetected. But then a piece of rubble shifted under one of the children's feet, sending a loud clatter echoing through the tunnel. Shouts rang out in the distance, followed by the unmistakable sound of weapons being readied. Veeler stepped forward, his body tense, his claws flexing. Stay here, he said, his voice low but commanding. Cole grabbed his arm. Don't do anything stupid. Veeler met his gaze, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Stupidity and bravery often look the same. Protect the children, Captain. With that, he moved into the shadows, his form disappearing into the darkness. The minutes that followed felt like hours. Cole's grip on his weapon tightened as the distant sounds of shouting and scuffling grew louder. The children huddled together, their fear etched into their faces. Lorne glanced at Cole, his expression uneasy. Do we move? Not yet, Cole said, his eyes fixed on the tunnel ahead. Finally, Veeler reappeared, his movements slower than before. His armor was scorched, and a gash ran along his arm, but he was alive. The scavengers won't trouble us anymore, he said simply. Cole nodded, his respect for Veeler growing. Let's keep moving. As they emerged from the tunnels into the faint light of day, the group let out a collective sigh of relief. The danger wasn't over, but for now, they had made it one step closer to safety. Veeler turned to Cole, his expression unreadable. You risked much for us today. I still don't understand why. Cole met his gaze, his voice steady. Because sometimes, doing the right thing is the only thing that matters. Wheeler didn't respond, but a flicker of something, trust, perhaps, passed across his face. The fragile alliance between them held, for now. And with it, the faintest hope for something greater. The makeshift safe house was little more than the remains of a storage facility, its walls cracked but intact enough to keep out the cold wind that swept through the ruins of Xeric Prime. Captain Arden Cole leaned against a support beam, his eyes scanning the horizon through a gap in the wall. His team was stationed just outside, forming a perimeter. The Xeric children were huddled together near a glowing heater unit, their soft bioluminescence faintly illuminating the darkened space. Wheeler sat apart, his massive frame slouched as he worked to bind the gash on his arm with a torn strip of fabric. Cole approached, his steps deliberate but quiet. "You should have told me you were injured earlier," Cole said, handing him a sterile bandage from his pack. Wheeler looked up, his expression wary but less hostile than before. "It wasn't critical," he said, his voice low. "The scavengers fought harder than I expected, but I handled it." "You shouldn't have had to," Cole replied. "We're supposed to be in this together." Wheeler's sharp gaze met his, a flicker of something softer behind the usual distrust. Together. An unusual sentiment, coming from a human. Cole crouched beside him, watching as Wheeler replaced the makeshift bandage with the one Cole had provided. "Maybe. But unusual doesn't mean wrong." Wheeler said nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. For the first time, Cole felt that Wheeler wasn't just tolerating him, he was beginning to consider him an ally. As night fell, the temperature dropped sharply. The children whispered quietly among themselves, their voices a soothing hum that contrasted with the howling wind outside. Cole sat near the heater, his hands stretched out toward its warmth. One of the children, a girl with shimmering green and gold skin, hesitated before approaching him. "Are we going to be safe here?" she asked, her voice trembling. Cole turned to her, his expression softening. "We'll do everything we can to keep you safe. I promise." She nodded but didn't move away. After a moment, she added, "You don't seem like the humans they told us about. They said humans only know how to destroy." Cole's chest tightened at her words. "Sometimes, we forget how to do the right thing. But not all of us. Not always." The girl's luminous eyes searched his face for a long moment before she returned to the other children. Wheeler, who had been watching from the shadows, stepped forward. "They've been told stories their entire lives," Wheeler said, his tone quiet but pointed. "Stories about humans as monsters. And for much of this war, those stories felt true." Cole nodded, his gaze fixed on the children. "I don't blame them for believing it. We've given them plenty of reasons." Wheeler's expression softened, but only slightly. "You're different. I see that now. But I don't know if it will be enough." "It has to be," Cole said firmly. "Because if it's not, then everything we're doing here, everything I've risked, it's meaningless." The sound of distant engines broke the stillness of the night. Cole immediately straightened, signaling for silence. His team outside radioed in. "Captain," Lorne's voice crackled through the comm, "we've got incoming. Looks like a drone squad and 2 armored transports. Human patrol." Cole's stomach sank. "How long until they reach us?" 10 minutes, maybe less." "Orders?" Cole glanced at Wheeler, who had also heard the report. The Xeric commander's expression was grim. "If they find us, there will be no reasoning with them. They will kill us all." Cole nodded, his mind racing. "We're not going to let that happen." He activated his comm again. "Lorne, fall back to the safe house and secure the perimeter. No one engages unless I give the order." "Understood, Captain." Within minutes, Lorne and the rest of the team had regrouped at the safe house. The sound of the approaching patrol grew louder, the hum of engines accompanied by the faint clatter of weapons being readied. Wheeler moved to stand beside Cole, his claws flexing instinctively. "What's your plan, Captain?" Wheeler asked, his tone sharp. "I'll talk to them," Cole said. Wheeler's eyes narrowed. You think words will stop them? These are your soldiers, following your orders. They won't listen. They'll listen to me, Cole said, his voice firm. I won't let this turn into a bloodbath. Veeler studied him for a moment, then stepped back. I hope you're right. When the patrol arrived, their lights swept over the ruins, illuminating the safe house. Cole stepped into the open, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. The lead transport halted, and a human officer emerged, his weapon trained on Cole. Captain Cole, the officer barked. What the hell are you doing here? Command's been looking for your team. I'm handling a situation, Cole replied evenly. Stand down. There's no threat here. The officer's eyes narrowed. No threat? We've detected Xeric biosignatures in the area. Are you telling me you haven't found any hostiles? I'm telling you to lower your weapons, Cole said. There are children here. Non-combatants. Killing them won't win this war. The officer hesitated, his grip on his weapon tightening. Those children are the enemy, Captain. You know the orders. I know the difference between orders and what's right, Cole shot back. And I'm telling you, these kids are no threat. If you fire on them, you'll be condemning innocent lives. Are you prepared to live with that? The officer glanced at the other soldiers, uncertainty flickering across his face. Before he could respond, Veeler stepped out of the shadows, his massive frame imposing but unthreatening. If you need someone to blame, Veeler said, his voice calm but firm, blame me. I'm their guardian. Whatever punishment you intend, let it fall on me. The soldiers shifted uneasily, clearly unnerved by Veeler's presence. Cole took a step forward, his voice steady but urgent. You don't have to do this. Stand down, and we can report this together. Let me take responsibility. The tension was unbearable as the officer weighed his options. Finally, he lowered his weapon, signaling for his team to do the same. You're putting your career on the line for this, Captain, he said. I know, Cole replied. But it's worth it. The officer nodded reluctantly. You have 24 hours to clear this area. After that, I can't guarantee what happens. Understood, Cole said. As the patrol departed, Cole let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Veeler approached, his expression unreadable. You've risked everything for us, Veeler said quietly. Why? Because someone has to, Cole replied. If we don't start protecting what's left, on both sides, then we've already lost. Veeler's gaze softened, and he extended a clawed hand. You have my gratitude, Captain. And my trust. Cole shook his hand firmly, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Let's get these kids out of here. As dawn broke, the group began their journey toward a safer refuge. The children walked in silence, their fear slowly giving way to cautious hope. Cole felt the weight of his decision, but for the first time in years, he also felt a sense of purpose. Above them, the sky began to clear, revealing the faint glimmers of distant stars. For Cole, those stars represented more than just a galaxy at war, they represented the possibility of something better. And that, he decided, was worth fighting for.